megawatt solar farm. By the time they went back to Cincinnati, Ohio and exchanged letters with me, I was advised that by the land CEC that land had been allocated to somebody else. I looked like a fool with one of the largest companies in America. So you can't allow yourself to do that. So this board is going to make sure that we put private sector processes in place so that when an investor looks at us and says we're interested, that those things that an investor needs to see to have trust and confidence that their investment is safe, starting with a title deed, starting with cooperation from the county government, starting with all the services that an investor expects. That's where I see the county in 5 years. Specifically, I can't tell you who's going to come, but if we don't have a process that invites them and makes them feel comfortable, that I believe that we'll continue to be starved for investment. And I'm sorry, what was the second? You wanted me to, I'm sorry, I have a very bad memory about questions.
As a board member, where are you likely to advise the board to go and learn best practices on matters related to the investment corporation and probably borrow a leave or even put in place better cooperative governance practices? Okay,
so yeah, I do remember now. Well, we've started. I mean, we're modeling what we're doing after Laikipia. So we went and took a leaf from another county. Actually started during Governor Maruta's time, this bill that we've passed. So our governor, Mwadime, is in Rwanda today. He's looking at best practices in Rwanda on how they've used the PPP model to support water investments as he tries to figure out how the county can best take advantage of the water we have from Kilimanjaro, from Mazima 2, and from Dorokuba. So I'm one who's been trained to look for best practice. So my answer to your question is wherever we can go and find out something that can help us do the work we want to do in TAITA TAVETA, we'll be happy to. But we have 40 counties in our own country who haven't even started this process. So we'll be looking for Can Invest, Brand Kenya, and other organizations that are part of the government's process to try to learn what we can and be good partners with those organizations to develop the many opportunities that I know everybody here in this room knows exists in this county.
Thank you, Mr. William. I think on your table you have a notebook. That notebook was meant for you to note down the questions. If a member chooses to ask the 2 questions at a go, you note them down so for avoidance of repeating questions. Otherwise, for the members, if you feel like your question has been already answered, you don't have necessarily to ask it. Feel like in the process of answering one question, he has also answered yours. Then I don't think it's also necessary to repeat the same question, because we'll put our nominee in a task of repetition throughout the vetting process. Otherwise, I'm so grateful. So far, so good. Let us go to the next member. Honorable for Ndani Mbale, who happens also to be your MCA. Hamid, welcome.
Thank you very much. Mine will just in one. I'll go very slowly. As for the acts that you have helped so much in midwifery, it comes out like the county government will support the corporation for the next 2 years, and then the corporation is supposed to stand on its own 2 feet after 2 years. Where do you think the investment corporation will get its finances from after that? The question number 1. Question number 2. What would you consider to be the key factors for attracting or establishing investments in this county? Kindly put some little bit explanation to those factors. What would you consider to be the key factors for attracting or establishing investments in this county? And while on that, this one will just be answered on a general format. There's been hue and cry within TAVETA County of people masquerading to be investors but hemorrhaging the economy of TAVETA. What will be your general opinion around that, considering that will be the chair of this investment company?
Okay, thank you. I believe that the startup capital for this corporation, even I'd like to believe that we would have support for 2 years from county government. Maybe not. Maybe the cash is a bit short. So I think my planning is to try to look for there are donors, World Bank, Danita, SNV, who have programs to help start up, not startup investment companies, but to help counties who have a desire to help themselves, that some capital could be available for that. So I would expect that, let's say the first 2 years I've talked to the governor about it, and of course his story these days is he doesn't have any money. I think you guys know that. Context of your own lives. But so we're not trying to, we're not pretending that there's money waiting for us to help us operate for 2 years. So we're going to consider this as a startup where we're going to try to develop our own resources. We're going to do a budget, and we're going to submit it as soon as we're vetted and operational. And then we're going to be happy to get what we can from the government, or from the county government, and then from donors and from well-wishers. And then occasionally, we might find an investor who's so interested in buying a ranch or getting a mining license that we'll be able to ask them for some upfront capital injection to help us, depending on the equity that we take or the design of the investment, whether it's a PPP or whether it's just a strict two-party partnership. However, but so I think the question is based on the fact that what are you going to do about what money are you going to use to operate as a company? Now, that would have been an easier question to ask and answer some years ago when we were probably in better shape financially than we are now. But as you are also in your wards are, making proposals for funding, we hope that each MCA and those involved in the county government, maybe you'll shave off a little of your budget and send it our way to the corporation to help us with because the work we're doing is basically for the county, not ward-based, except for some of those local investments. So I think that there's a lot of unanswered questions. We're hopeful that we'll have enough money to, get an office. The governor said he had an investment office, but I see he's given it to his lawyer in the governor's office now. So I think we need a place to do our work. We need to have a very minimal staff, and you'll be seeing in your committee, you'll be seeing that request of as part of, I think, the supplemental budget that you guys are all working on. What do I think are the key factors to make an investor? I know the answer to that because I've brought 5 or 6 investors, none of who agreed to invest here, and they were all sent away by similar issues. A lack of confidence in the stability of the county government, as seen by outsiders, that, the things I mentioned, and I don't want to mention them again because I don't want to think back on all the things that we've learned in the inner workings of the county government between the governors and the county assembly. So stability is the most important thing for an investor. And stability can come in a number of ways. As I said, I lost General Electric, $75 million investment because I couldn't provide the land that was promised. So I think there's a lot of land in our county that a number of people think they own. That can never be the case. Only one person can own land, or one group can own land. So that plus, I think some of the things that are required that we do have. When I first came to TAVETA, we didn't have a road from Boy to TAVETA. I had to, I used to drive Hummer. Some of you guys who know me a long time. I used to have a four-wheel drive Hummer just to get to TAVETA from Wendani. And now we have a brand new road, and we have a train, and we have train stations all over the place, and some of those infrastructure things that an investor needs, we have. But some of the things that we don't do well keep us from benefiting from those investments. The need to develop a livestock supply chain in this county is just in front of us. We have ranches, we have water, potential water, and then we have a train station in Misiani that was built just to take livestock to Mombasa for export, and we're doing nothing with it. So I think, Jimmy, the your question is, what do we need? We have some things that we need. We have some other things that we have to work on: transparency, trust, land title deeds, cooperation between the governor, or the executive, and the legislative branches of government. And once those are in place, and the reason that I know it works is it worked in Laikipia. It works for Anyang Nyong'o. He's a peacemaker. He brings people together, and people say, let's go to Kisumu. Let's go to Laikipia. I want them to say, let's go to TAITA. Third question. How do you tell the fake, the fraudsters? I'm really good at that, by the way. So I've heard some stories about people that have come. Even some of them have been, I think the governor even brought some investors to the county assembly. I think you've met some of them since he's been elected. Okay, it's really easy to do diligence on a serious investor. There are documents. When somebody forms a company 30 days ago and comes and tells you they want to do this, that, and the other, you have to wonder. I don't want to talk about specifics because I don't want to discourage anybody, but I know a real investor from a fraudster. And I think you do too. I think each of you have your own experiences, and you've heard stories about this guy who wants to get together with this guy, and they want to get a contract for the government, and Those are not investors. Investors are Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing in the United States wanting to come here and take industrial minerals from the county. A serious investor is Hilton International wanting to build a conference center in Boy. Serious investors are some Chinese investors, because there's a lot of Chinese investors that you have to be careful, because the wave of China came here, serious guys. And whenever that happens, there are always other investors who also just want to be Chinese, and they want to come in and take your money. There's ways that the private sector, in my training, along with some of my directors and the skill set of some of you as well, where we can sit down and talk to them and we can tell if they're serious or not. So I think you're asking the question because you've had some experience, as some of you have, of seeing some fraudsters around. And we're going to be very careful to make sure that the investors that we do business with are serious, sustainable, long-term investors who create jobs and sustainable economy.
Thank you. Thank you. When I look at my watch, we have already close to 1 hour. Plus, a lot wish for us to take too long. However, your contribution and your detailed explanation is also helping us get to know so many things. Very much, Honorable Jimmy, for such critical questions, which have acted as an eye-opener for some of us. I will just request Mr. William also to be brief. Guys, you're trying your best. I can see you're trying your best. But, in the interest of time, let us go straight to Mr. Honorable Kimuyu.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable William, have 2 questions here, but as if you have almost exhausted. Like now, the first question is: what measures will you recommend to assist the corporation raise resources to finance its mandate or stock functions? Then the other one, the second one, is almost exhausted, as we have been mentioning, Laikipia and so on. Which count do you admire in terms of how it conducts its investment affairs, or which county do you consider to be on the right treasury as far as matters of government investment are concerned? Kindly give us your reasons for that.
With guidance from the chair, I also feel, Mr. Honorable Kimuyu, your questions were exhaustively answered.
You're right.
By the nominee, so we have no need to repeat. And also, maybe we can take the next question from Honorable Sariki. Then I look at other questions. If they have been exhausted, go to the next other question, kindly. In interest of time. So, Madam Sariki, could ask your question. I think it's a bit relevant. Then we continue from.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lay, kindly tell this committee how the board is likely to work with the following partners: Chambers of Commerce, State Law Office, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Mining, and Ministry of Lands. My second question to you is: which county executive departments would you consider to be the closest to the functioning of the investment corporation? Kindly explain.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that question. The partnerships that will be required for this corporation to be successful are some that you've mentioned, surely. The proposal to develop these 2 pieces of legislation, in fact, came from the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, where I partnered with Andrew Mamburi, the chairman, and his people to pick up on the drafts that we had to develop. Now, the Ministry of Trade, I think, if I can assume that all of you have seen the bills, seen the copies of the bills, that we have a couple members of our board that'll be from trade and from finance. There'll be participation by the executives, the county executives from those 2 ministries that'll be part of our day-to-day activity. In terms of mining, I mean, I just met briefly with some of the directors that are waiting to be vetted. And we have a list of partners that we're going to meet as soon as we're official. We're going to meet with the churches, we're going to meet with the miners, we're going to meet with the tourism people, each of the sectors that we've talked about in terms of to engage them fully, not with a list of things we need from them, but with a list of opportunities that we can provide to let them do the work that each of these sectors, the mining people, the most secretive people in the county that do mining, next door to Tanzania where it's an open, very successful. We think that that business needs to be regularized. You've heard the president was going to come in and launch the Gemstone Center in Voi. Okay, that's not going to be enough. He launches it and nobody does their work there. So we're going to participate. We believe that every sector, I believe every sector of the economy in TAITA TAVETA is going to be happy to meet us and see what we can do to help them develop their opportunities. We don't have a list of what we want the miners to do. We want the miners to tell us what they need and see if we can help facilitate them by providing the transparency, the process that I talked about earlier of managing investors, and so on. So in terms of what we'll do to promote these partnerships, I think just face-to-face meetings as soon as we can will be the best way for us to move forward. And people are starting to talk about this now. I'm getting phone calls from the chairman of the Ranchers Association that says, finally, there's going to be a process for us to attract investors for our ranch. I was invited to speak at a carbon credit seminar in Voi last week. They're so anxious to get some organization so that they have a lot of internal dissension. Some of the ranchers want carbon credits. Some of them want animals to graze and that and the other. So they're going to use us to try to define. So I think the work that we're going to do with various organizations, including the Chamber, and including the various organizations that are represented by the executive branch of government, will be where we spend most of our time.
I think we can allow Madam answer your question. 16, kind of intertwined question on ability, hearing both. So we can ask question then.
What are the roles of Investment Corporation Board in terms of account as provided by the Public Finance Management Act 2012? What would be the ideal relationship between the Investment Corporation and the county executive, county assembly?
Okay, so if I can answer the second one first. The county of TAITA TAVETA is the shareholder of this company. So as the directors of the company, we'll have, it'll be our work to engage all aspects, all three branches of county government. Because the shareholding isn't just from the executive branch or from the legislative branch, it's from the entire county. So in terms of how we're going to work with, I expect that we'll make a report at the trade committee's committee level. I expect that we'll participate in reporting in any of the county or any of the county assembly committees. I expect we'll get questions and maybe called to along with the county executives to make reports. I guess I can tell you, we're going to encourage interaction. We're not going to go sit in a room somewhere and run this. We can't run it without input from you, from the county assembly. At the ward level, committee level, can't run it without input from the executive. The governor's just finished his appointments for the executive. So some of these guys we don't even know yet. We have to vet a few. It's going to take a little time to get organized, but when we get organized, our interaction, you'll be telling us that you're busy to, I'm sure. going to be coming to you. Because source of information that we at the ward level, MCA, or we like this, have, and those things we're going to start, how can I say, I could imagine that the formation of this company, which is historical, by the way, we've always had 3 branches of government, just like and now we're going to have a private sector company in the middle of all this that's responsible as a Companies Act. So your first question about accountability, I've heard stories, accountability stories in your own lives at the county level. Where's this money? Where's this da-da-da-da-da? And those kind of things, from a private sector standpoint, those kind of things happen because of the way county governments are formed. I don't want to go into too much about it, but I'm willing to talk more about it at another point. But I've done some investigation, and for those of you like Anissa, been around here a long time, when they devolved the TAITA government, there were 3 administrative, mayor of one of them, I remember. Okay, there was TAITA, there was Boy municipality, TAVETA municipality, and there was a county council. Transition of those administrative units to devolution to the county government was never done properly. Things are missing. It'll never happen with it. The company will run under the Companies Act, returns, board meetings, money will be audited, the accounts will be audited. I would expect, and I would be very proud to have this corporation be the most compliant part of the government. And that's how we'll run the business. So don't worry about not being involved. If you're a committee chairman, you'll be called and you'll be a chance to tell us what you think. If you're in a CEC and you're responsible for a particular area where we have an investor, you'll be part of what we're doing. If you're an MCA and the investment is in your ward, you'll be the chief investment officer for that particular investment in the framework of the TAITA Investment and Development Corporation. So you're the shareholder. You have all the rights of a shareholder. There's no other shareholder. So if it doesn't work the way it should, the county will be responsible for trying to manage it. The private sector part of the county, which is historical, first time we've ever had. That's how I look at it. So I hope that answers. And I didn't mean to bring up the historical devolution. But if you're not talking about it, you're not worried about the county assembly. Just you.
Thank you for that elaborate answer. Confidence still on us, especially on the part of the accountability. I'd like to allow Honorable to ask her 2 questions. The first round of questions with Araya. When I look at Honorable Anissa's questions, part of it has already answered, so you don't need to repeat. Let her ask, then you give a brief comment about them. Kindly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go direct to my questions. Thank you and welcome, Mr. Billey. My first question is, kindly give us the roadmap to realizing the operations and success of the investment corporation. What steps would your board take to ensure that the legal entity realizes its mandate? That is question number 1. I'll go straight to question number 2. How do you analyze financial and economic viability of a public-private partnership project? How do you analyze financial and economic viability of a public-private partnership project, PPP? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that question. Like any private sector company, the directors are responsible for development of a business plan, okay, or roadmap. And as we have been waiting since before Christmas for this opportunity to be vetted, some of us have sat together and we have a draft business plan for how we're going to operate, starting with the earlier question about raising capital and the initial steps of forming the company. So I believe that we're, if I can say that we're starting with a clean sheet. There's an expectation that the formation of this corporation and the implementation of a spatial plan, similar to what was done in the municipality of Motate was being formed, where you actually want to know who owns what, where's the water, where are the power connections. And once we get that in place and we can go to investors with our business plan and say, we have tremendous opportunity for value addition for coconuts and bananas in TAVETA. Or we have a great opportunity to develop a convention center in Voi because of our logistics and our location between Nairobi and, you know, how we could become the Naivasha for Mombasa, things like that. So the roadmap is a simple business plan roadmap. We have directors, we have working capital, we have constituents, we have shareholders, and that will be the roadmap that we follow as a company developed under the Companies Act. Now, Honorable Anissa, this question about PPPs. I'm very much involved in these discussions right now, as I said, with some investors that are interested in bringing water from TAVETA to the rest of the county. And you've asked the question you've asked the hardest question: how to value each of the P's. Is it the public P? Is it the private P? And how's the partnership going to work? Is it 50-50, 90-10, and so on? So specifically valuing a natural resource like water is a very difficult deal. So just to give you an example so I can keep time. The PPP for water, it's very difficult to do PPP for just water. So what the investors now are doing is they're combining the revenue from water with the revenue from agriculture. And they're providing water as a checkoff to the farmer. He doesn't pay for the water until he sells the crops that he grows. So the formation of the valuation of the PPPs each one of them is going to be different. I mean, surely when you're selling water for 55 shillings per cubic meter and you decide to sell it for 100 instead of 55, that changes the business case that you're considering. So the PPP model now that the government of Kenya is proposing, you know that it's good for TAITA TAVETA because now the government of Kenya is allowing for a county PPP. When we started PPPs, it was the government of Kenya and the investor, no matter which county it was. The model would be based on the same legal framework. But now the government of Kenya is now considering a PPP where we can have our own public-private partnership as a county with an investor for something, the county asset. So there's really no way I can answer specifically how do you value. You have to get to know the investor, you have to sit down and negotiate, You have to look at the legal framework, who owns the asset, and what's the required rate of return on investment, county standpoint and investor standpoint. But I can assure you that the Finance Committee of the County Assembly, the finance, the executives involved in the business, they'll be part of these discussions throughout. So I wouldn't want you to think that there's going to be any mystery. PPPs will be open. People will know that investors bring in this, counties bring in this, expect this. Each of them will be done on an individual basis. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bill, for again giving us. Though the question looked vague, but you've tried to bring some flesh on it. Let us go straight to Taraya, Honorable. He will also ask his both questions, and we will be through with the first round of questions. So we go back to the chair, the co-chair. We're winding up the vetting process. Karibu, Bwana Taraya.
Thank you so much, Chair. I have two questions for you, Mr. Bill. And one of the questions is, in your view, which county facility or asset would you wish to manage as a board so as to maximize on income by ensuring that it operates optimally? And kindly give us your reasons. That's question number one. I hope it's clear. Then here it says, in your view, which county facility or assets would you wish to manage as a board? A facility. We have several facilities in the county. Maybe there are particular facilities or assets that maybe as a board you want them to manage them. And as a board, so as to maximize on income by ensuring that it operates optimally. Various facilities, maybe you feel when you manage them, they can bring revenues optimally. So you can give us the assets that maybe you have in mind and kindly give us your reasons for the same. I think I'm clear on that. Then question number two, what would you like to be remembered for after serving your term as one of the pioneer directors? Thank you.
Taking that question, just want to remind us that we have around 10 to 15 minutes for us to be through. So you can answer those questions briefly, Mr. Bill.
Okay. Let me start with the second one, because I was thinking about that this morning. What would I like to be reminded for? I'd like to be reminded for someone who generated own source revenue. Really, that's what it's all about. Money we generate here for ourselves. And I think you guys talk about own source revenue all the time. It's taking the little money we get from a tattoo license they pass when Donnie coming up with something significant been generated by ourselves. So I just want to I want to move us from begging for money from Nairobi to covering our own recurrent expenses with our own source revenue. So I want you guys to remember that Mzungu he was one that started this own source revenue thing. That's what I want to be. But in terms of facilities that I would focus on, for me, I'm trying to think of a more complicated answer. But in this county, it's the use of land. Everybody that wants to invest in TAITA TAVETA, because I don't think we're going to find too many investors who want to do you know, internet and computer science and things, they're going to want to use the land. Whether they want to use it for agriculture or for mining or for a new tourist resort or for whatever. And in my, I don't know if there's anybody here who's, do you have a land committee? Is there a committee for land?
There's community lands, yes.
Yeah. So I think we're going to spend some time with them at the beginning, because the investors that I've brought to TAVETA, the ones that I had to send away, were mostly because I didn't know who owned the land. And even the ranchers, you talk to Bongozo and his friends who manage these ranches, the hardest question for them to answer is, you guys know it. And if you have a sheikh from Dubai, got $20 million that he's invested in a ranch that he call his own in Kenya, his lawyer, his lawyer's lawyer, and his lawyer's lawyer's lawyer are all going to want to see a title deed. They're going to check it, and they're going to make sure it's real. And then when you can get that trust, then the money will come. But my personal feeling, even though I know there are other facilities, we could consider cesses. We have a beautiful highway and road and this, but you know, Cess County, that can be. So I haven't seen, other than land, and one other asset that I can only mention if you promise not to throw me out of here. Okay? Best, second most important asset in the county are women. Yeah, I knew you were going to do that. Okay, so I don't want you to look at me like I'm crazy or that I'm just married to a Kenyan woman. But I have experience of 5 or 6 projects in the county. Some of you know about. The success of which was only because of the determination, perseverance of the women. Now, I don't know how our corporation will consider that as a facility to develop, but you need to know that I have a lot of experience in the county. Most of the successes have been led by women, and that's not a learning opportunity for men, because I'm also one, but I'm enlightened. And I think pursuing that is also an important part of it. And that's not a specific answer to your question. The answer to your question for land use. Okay, but I'm happy for you to confirm that what I said is true. So now I have a partner in the room. Okay. But for me, those are the things we're looking at, the practical side. And the women issue is a cultural. I've watched it. I came here 12 years ago and I didn't know anything about TAITA.
No.
So anyway, let me not go on about
William,
that. If I've answered your question, then our focus will be on land use.
I think your question is well answered. The second answer notwithstanding was...
Don't take offense, you guys.
I cannot.
I've got a lot of experience.
I cannot
in
do
this
that. I beg you, when you are addressing the members, questions are asked by members, but you are answering to the chair for the sake of this mission and the interests of the rest. Now, Wanabil, we are through with, I think, through the questions you have got, we have asked you, you can get to know that the County Assembly is serious about this cooperation. Take it with a lot of seriousness, and that's why we have drilled you through very pertinent issues pertaining this particular investment. It's an exciting opportunity to both of us, the executive and the County Assembly. However, a vetting process is normally meant also to test on suitability and many other things. So we're going to go to the next bunch of questions, which we are going to be taken through by my co-chair. These questions might sound somehow personal, but they are meant also to know the background. Because as you know, the corporation is a legal corporation. So you will be you'll be very legal, and therefore it's good we know exactly what you are made of, what you are. So I just beg you to never take any offense on the next bunch of questions being asked by co-chair.
Thank you so much, my co-chair. Mr. Lay, I'll urge you to be so brief because your time is almost up. First question, what challenges do you anticipate as the board chair, and how do you plan to overcome them?
I got to tell you, I'm feeling more comfortable now than I was when I started this morning. I wasn't sure if you guys thought this was a good idea or not. But if I consider through the chair what comments that have been made, the cooperation of the county assembly is a potential challenge that now I think doesn't exist. Challenge of operating capital is obviously a challenge. It's interesting. It's a good time for us to be doing this because we need to start. This thing is not going to put a bunch of money into the exchequer this financial year. This is a process that we're involved. So the challenge of operating capital has been mentioned. I believe that, in Kenya, I've spent a lot of time battling special interests. I could entertain you with stories of political interference that I've experienced since the week I was in TAITA 12 years ago. People who came to me and wanted a kickback, people who came to me and wanted to do this, that, or the other. We can talk about the challenges of political interference. I know how to handle that. When Musaila Mudavadi was the Minister of Local Government, some of you may know we changed county clerks back in the days before devolution. Somebody wanted some money from TAITA. So I'm not afraid of the challenge is there, but I think now I have a reputation of someone who doesn't pay or take. And from a private sector standpoint, that's an important challenge in any part of, it's not just Kenya, even in America, kind of thing. So political interference was a challenge, but I think I've been here long enough and enough people know me, and I've had a reputation of trying to do things that are good for.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I go to the next question. What leadership attributes do you intend to entrench in your board as a chair?
It's part of the same question. Integrity, focus on return on investment, making money instead of just spending money. The concept of bringing a private sector enterprise into the county government of TAVETA is, as we mentioned earlier, historical and important in terms of what we do. So the leadership that's required is to push back on some of the things that brought us here and to try to affect change.
Next question.
Go ahead.
what is your success story in the boards that you have already served?
Okay, my biggest success story was General Motors. When I came to General Motors in 1988 as the director, Zuzu had a market share of 14%. I was replaced by Bashe, that raised her, replaced me as chairman. General Motors now has 52% market share.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you so much.
We are winding up. Mr. Bill. I'm taking the next bunch of questions, very few of them. You have talked of a successful story in General Motors, but Mr. Bill, as we are going through your profile and your achievements, either through the social media and the rest, there are some questions here we have to ask you. Maybe you clarify them in the interest of the public, also for the information of the members. And this brings to us the next question, that you have been quoted as being passionate and instrumental to the workings and events leading to the passing of the County Investment Act, which also establishes the board you are being nominated to. Don't you think such involvement denies you partiality as a chair, as the chair of the board? And what exactly is your interest in this? I can see the second part of the question is answered. You've answered through the other questions, but the major question is this board you're talking about, from the beginning of the formation of the act and the passing of the act and up to today, you have been at the center of it. Now you are being nominated as the chair. Where will be your partiality in this?
Okay, so I can see why you would ask that question from a logical standpoint. But my answer would, like you've just told me not to be offended, I hope you won't be offended by my answer. If I hadn't done it, nobody would else. Who's going to do it? I did this because I can do it. I don't have shares. I only have one vote as the chairman. I couldn't possibly have any special interest in this at this point. And as we progress, you're going to see everything we do. So if you see me look like I'm doing something that's a special interest, fire me. Dismiss me. But the way I look at this has been a passion for me for the reasons I've mentioned since the first day I set foot in this county. And I sat at the Sunderland Hotel and I heard a story about a defunct TAITA dairy co-op. And somebody's girlfriend ran off with all the money. At that point I thought, no, we should do something for the dairy business here. I started it. I never made a penny from Aziwa TAITA. I never had any special or any financial interest in anything I've done in this county. The only financial interest I've had is funding my wife's political campaigns, which have nothing to do with this corporation. So for you to try to connect my interest in developing a tool that can save this county and to consider why I might be the chairman of that effort, I believe it's a reward for the hard work I've put into this and could never be considered as anything else.
Okay. The next question is, in your previous corporate engagement, you earned upwards of 1.5 million a month, which is not going to be the case with the Investment Corporation Board. Again, what is your motivation in this?
Well, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it for the I'm doing it because I have a 12-year-old son who's got no future in this county unless we can develop an sustainable economic model to earn our own source revenue. So nobody's brought up my age yet, but I'm sort of retired. Okay? I'm not in this for the money. If we get a 10,000 shilling allowance from the Public Service Commission for our meetings, fine. But I don't expect a salary. I will tell you something that I wasn't going to mention, but since you've mentioned it now, you guys all, I think, probably attended Wakuja's inauguration speech. I think you were all there with me. I was there. You heard him say, "Bring me an investor, you'll be paid." Did you hear? Maybe you're all thinking how you're going to get that money. Okay, we'll have a process inside the corporation that will allow for a commission or a finder's fee for a legitimate investor who's brought and gets invested in the county. The governor and I have agreed, I don't know how we'll do it legally, but he made the promise. I wouldn't have made it myself publicly, but he did. So now I think he's going to pressurize us to make sure that we have some way for those of us who spend time and effort to try to bring in an investor to the county, that if there's some sort of a commission structure or a reward structure that can be done, that would be and if I bring one myself, I probably will waive my right. So again, if you're trying to make a link between my ability to earn a salary as a chief executive of an American company in Kenya and what I'm doing in my later years as a retired husband of a TAITA politician, I'm not doing it for the money. You can quote me.
Thank you, Mr. Lay, for that answer. We have only 2 questions more, then we wind up. In the Business Daily, dated February 7th, 2013, it was alleged that you were at the center of the boardroom wars that saw all directors of the CMC Motors replaced at your instigation. How sure are we that you are not out to rock the Pioneer Investment Corporation board you're just likely to form? Your time was already over.
This is not a simple question. Okay, so again, you're alleging that a newspaper, the Business Daily, who reported on my very challenging time at CMC, I can give you my side of the story, which is different than was reported in the Business Daily. I was hired by the directors of CMC who bought the shares of, bought some shares from. And when I came into the company, my experience in the car business, it was after I retired from General Motors. They hired me, and because of my experience in the car business, they wanted to improve their business at CMC. When I came in as the chief executive, the group chief executive officer, there was an investigation that was started by some of the directors of the board, and I can be specific that it was the new shareholders of the company, or new shareholders and shareholders. The chairman of the group at the time, who can also remain nameless, as you can investigate, was involved in some fraudulent activities moving imports from transportation to cargo freight station, to freight station. I'm charging the company. That investigation concluded. I, as the CEO, I had to remove the chairman. And as a result of that movement, I was, government of Kenya, or the shareholders, their political, tried to deport me because I was on a work. That's what led to the government of Kenya giving me my citizenship, protected me. So I had nothing to do with the replacement of. Look at the investigation, the Hansard Parliament, realized that the CMA investigated shareholders that were then removed. Two of them have passed on. I didn't instigate any boardroom war. I was hired by some shareholders, found malfeasance with previous shareholders, and as a chief executive of the company and a member of the board. And because of the popularity of me being in the Business Daily 273 times in 4 years,
Picked one story that was this report.
So I would have no, what your report is suggesting was not true. Well, then I could never bring such an activity to. I don't know if that was clear or not. You know, I've signed some certain things I can't. See what by the rule. Not just if you have something more specific you want to ask me.
Okay,
But I think you were alleging that I might malfeasance.
yeah, okay.
Was previously practiced at the EMC company. The report that you cited, it was totally inaccurate.
It was totally inaccurate.
Totally inaccurate. I had nothing to, I was a member of the board. How do I instigate boardroom? I was just hired.
Maybe we can take some little time. We allow one of the members to read through those allegations.
Please.
So that
I want you to be clear that I had.
So that at least you'll be sure we're not coming up with something.
I don't want to be seen as anything but what I am.
But what you are. And again, if the allegations are not true, you're also allowed to sue the newspaper for defamation.
I tried that.
And you could have done that long ago, but it is 2013.
Yeah, not only the fact that it's.
But if members can agree, do we allow the member to read or read